Well, hello, my favorite people. How is everybody on this Sunday evening? I hope there is someone out there. Let me see all the comments. See how everyone is. I see Michelle saying, oh, Michael saying hello. Anybody else wants to see what countries we are watching from? Of course, USA here. Anybody wants to write and say hello? I am all ears. We have Brahim Ben Brahim. Here we have. Write down what countries you're watching from. We have Richard. Okay, Richard, I'll try. Richard Seblatovsky. I hope I did say it right. Guys, write down what countries you're watching from so we can see where we're at. Wonderful. We have Regis Skoda. We have Emil. Bulgaria, welcome. Of course, Mikhail is Germany. Excellent. So we have Diana Jasperson, US. Yes, USA, USA. Everybody gets up and scans USA. Brahim is from Morocco. Welcome. How is Morocco? Wow, it's a beautiful country. Hello from Australia. Odin Smith. Hello there. Viva Australia. David Bentley, USA. Again, USA, USA. I'm so excited. You guys all here. Beautiful. Glenn, hello from Canada. Canada, wonderful. How is Canada? How is Mr. Justin Trudeau? Oh my gosh, we need to talk about Trudeau. How is he doing? We have Diana Jasperson is from Arizona. Welcome. We have Danielle Descommons, upstate New York, USA. Yes, hello to New York, upstate USA again. It's beautiful. Yes, Morocco is beautiful. I watched some documentaries about Morocco. That's excellent. Here we have Milenka Rikic. If I am correct pronouncing this, we have USE. Interesting. Let me see. Wisconsin, USA, Richard. Yes, thank you. Thanks for typing. Belleville, New Jersey. We're going at it, guys. Keep everybody saying hello. So how was everybody's Sunday? It has been exciting week. Looks like the Ukraine-Russia war front. Looks like Russian troops advanced, and the private military contractor Wagner Group basically took the Solidar city away from Ukrainian troops. And of course, Zelensky immediately issued the order for Ukrainian troops to retake Solidar. So we'll see what is going to happen with that. See, David Alvarzo, Wichita Falls, Texas. Beautiful. Thank you, David. Greetings from Hungary. God bless you all. Thank you very much, Katie. Thank you. Katie Semes. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Forgive me, guys. I'm trying to do my best. And with the advances that Russian army made in Solidar, looks like there have been some changes in the top commander, the chain of command of Russian troops, where we know a few months ago, just before the Kherson, when Russia retreated from Kherson, Russian troops have designated, I believe that was General Sorovikin. They call him, Western media called him General Armageddon. Apparently, he's known for his very tough approach to military operations, and sounds like he was famous in conducting some successful operations on behalf of Russia in Syria. So General Surovikin, originally, my understanding, he was actually the head of Russians, what they call space and air troops. But he was put in a position of commanding the theater, the military theater in Ukraine, just a couple of months ago. But now they've changed it, and now I believe it's General Gerasimov who is going to be in charge of the theater of warfare on the Ukraine's front. So we'll see how this plays out. My understanding, General Surovikin will still be remaining as a deputy and focusing more on that same, field that he was originally involved in, which is space, air, sort of the division of Russian military. So we'll see what happens. But the tragedy of it is that, of course, Zelensky wants Ukrainian troops to immediately retake Solidar. Oh, guys, that means more death, more destruction, and more Ukrainian lives are going to be lost because the Zelensky just doesn't know when to stop. Just doesn't know when to stop. Let's hope, not for the sake of all that is holy. We have a comment. Let me see another comment. Brahim, I hope Ukraine will get back its old territory as soon as possible. Well, let's talk about it, Brahim. It's not really that simple. Ukraine originally had about 40 million people as entire country. Of course, Ukraine has many nationalities living in Ukraine. They have Ukrainians and they have ethnic Russians and Russian speakers. And then we have Armenians, Azerbaijanis, we have Georgians. They have a lot of nationalities. I'm thinking it's close to 100 of different ethnic groups. And of course, with 40 million people, the estimate of the population of Ukraine, that was before the 2022. So now that Ukraine lost a lot of people due to the war, and it lost a lot of people who ran to some went actually to Russia, some went to Europe as refugees. The population of Ukraine is, I'm thinking, probably down towards maybe higher 20s, maybe 30s mark, 30s millions, so maybe 29 million, maybe 30 some million. In other words, if you compare that to Russian population, Russia had, the last time I saw, about 140 million people. 140 million people Russia has. Plus, Russia has nuclear weapons. And of course, Russian army size, Putin recently signed, it was in the works that they want to enlarge their standing army up to, I believe, 1,250,000. So if you look at the size and the population count of Ukraine and population count of Russia, plus Russia is a nuclear nation, it's really hard to deduce how could Ukraine possibly win against Russia and Russia's power. So, of course, NATO is telling Ukraine, just keep fighting, we'll provide more weapons, and we'll provide you with economical support, what they say. But a lot of military analysts, including Scott Reeder, Douglas McGregor, who used to be a senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense in 2020 during Trump administration. So Colonel Douglas McGregor said that Ukraine is losing and there is nothing we can do to save Ukrainian army. No amount of weapons will help it, that we need peace talks. We need negotiations to bring this to a close. But of course, American senators, if you remember my last live, Lindsey Graham, who is a Republican senator, and there is a Democratic senator who is Chris Murphy, they both said, oh, as soon as we provide weapons to Ukraine, they will fight to the last person. So they don't mind Ukraine losing all the people. The question is, who will run out of people sooner? Ukraine, which is probably now down the population mark about 30 million people. Of course, that includes children, elderly, and women. Of course, we don't even know how many capable men is left. They are on their fifth or sixth mobilization wave. So they keep mobilizing these guys, sometimes sending them over to Britain, Spain, other countries to train them to the NATO standards. But how soon is Ukraine going to run out of men and soldiers at this rate? At some point, one of the Ukrainian top officials said that Ukraine at that time, a couple of months ago, was losing about 1,000 troops a day, about 200 to 500 dead, and the remainder wounded. If you're going at 1,000 a day casualties, and sometimes several thousands if we see some battles out there, and Russia has 140 million people, so who is going to run out of people faster? And of course, Russia being a nuclear nation, if Zelensky keeps talking about Ukraine acquiring nuclear weapons, we don't know how far this can go. This needs to stop. And I understand your sentiment, Brahim, about Ukraine getting all its territory back. But at this time, it is not looking like Ukraine has the capacity to do that. All it's going to do is lose more Ukrainian lives. The more fighting continues. They need to have peace talks with Russia. And of course, you have to remember, this whole entire 2022 war was entirely preventable if Zelensky would follow what they call Minsk agreements. Minsk agreements were the agreements to cease fire when Ukraine started following the coup that United States and EU sponsored the change of power in Ukraine, and they took down legally elected president at that time in 2014. Of course, Obama, Biden, Kerry, Pelosi, McCain, all those people were there, Victoria Nuland, and took down the legally elected president in Ukraine in 2014. Then the people of Ukraine who opposed that coup in what they call Eastern Ukraine region, they actually said, where is our president? We didn't elect a coup government. We do not agree with this, taking down our elected president. So the coup government started shelling Eastern Ukrainian area, and it continues to this day, the Donbass region. So all Zelensky had to do when he came to power in 2019, in fact, he promised to follow what they call Minsk agreements. These were signed in 2014, 2015, and Germany and France were grantors of the Ukraine stop shelling the Eastern Ukraine region. But of course, they didn't. And so the shelling of Eastern Ukraine continues to this day. But when Zelensky was elected in 2019, he promised that the shelling will be the first order of business for him as president to stop. He never did. And so in 2021 and 2022, the people of Eastern Ukraine who lived under Ukraine's shelling for the last almost now 9 years, they requested Russia's military assistance, and Russian parliament approved the military assistance to the Eastern Ukraine region of Donbass, where Ukraine pretty much was genociding all the Eastern Ukrainian population who is considered ethnically Russian or Russian speaking, but there's plenty of Ukrainian ethnic groups of people there too. It's just insane. So with what Zelensky is crying now, the lost territory would not have been lost, because the part of Minsk agreements were just basically Eastern Ukrainians requesting autonomy within Ukraine. They didn't want to, per se, break up from Ukraine. They just didn't want a coup government dictating to them and banning Russian language and banning their rights. They wanted to assert their rights and have the due process and have their rights listened to. And that was part of Minsk agreements. And instead, Zelensky did not follow Minsk agreements. They continued shelling and killing people of Eastern Ukraine. And when those people asked Russia for military help, of course, we know what happened. Russian troops came in 2022 And now Russian troops took some other territories, including that eastern Ukraine, under their control. And those people now in 2022 held referendum, in fact, to join Russia. So Zelensky in 2019 could have kept all his territories, of course, other than Crimea that sort of went back to Russia in 2014. But now Zelensky, by not fulfilling Minsk agreements, lost another 20% of Ukraine's territory. All he had to do is follow agreements and implement them. But he never wanted, even though he promised. Now we know Angela Merkel and the former French president, who were grantors of this Minsk agreement, they guaranteed that this will be implemented, now admitted to media a few weeks ago that this was all a ploy to buy Ukraine more time so Ukraine could attack eastern Ukraine. And of course, the main goal is always Russia when somebody attacks somebody. So, yeah. Let me see. Next comment we have here. Too many Banderas creatures, says Franco. Yeah, every time we talk about Ukraine, guys, I always bring it up. It's unfortunate that Ukraine is now subscribes to the ideology of Stepan Bandera. That's why I see too many Banderas, says Franco. Banderas means the people who follow Stepan Bandera, Nazi collaborator with Hitler during World War II, Ukrainian nationalist. He actually lived in Western Ukraine, and Western Ukraine changed hands between Poland and Russia. So when it was under Poland, he was considered a terrorist by Poland. And then when Poland, portion of it, after the Molotov-Ribbentrop Act during World War II, actually just before the Germany attacked Russia, Soviet Union rather, that portion of Western territory became under Russian control. Then Stepan Bandera, instead of terrorizing and placing bombs into Polish officials' buildings, started to do the same to the Russian ones. But then when Hitler came in and occupied that portion of Ukraine, he founded the Nazi division of SS. And they slaughtered hundreds of thousands of Jewish people, Russian people, Polish people, Ukrainian people who did not agree with his ideology, Nazis, and didn't support Hitler. And they also killed Romani people, just about every ethnic group, anybody who did not agree with their Nazi ideology. And unfortunately, Ukraine, after the Western-backed coup in 2014, started to fall even more and more and more into the Nazi ideology of Stepan Bandera. By the way, his ideology is outlawed in Poland. Polish parliament had made basically the resolution and the law saying that you cannot follow Stepan Bandera in Poland. But in Ukraine, he is hailed as a hero. Monuments are placed to him. And the guy who slaughtered during World War II on behalf of Hitler hundreds of thousands of civilians in most cruel, savage ways, you just have to Google to see it. Ukraine, he is a hero, and the Ukrainian military officially stands there and sings praises to Bandera. It's insane, but that's what Ukraine does. Let me see, whose comment did I not see yet? I see. Of course not. They either left the country or they went underground. Not sure if you're talking about Banderites or who are you talking about. As far as Banderites, they're not hiding. They're pretty much in the open. And they always basically support the ideology that is Stepan Bandera, that does not allow for any diversity of nationalities. They basically say Ukraine is only for Ukrainians. Everyone else their slogan is death to the enemies. Amazing truth, says Nelson and Ricardo. Thank you very much. Germany, what's up with Germany? Germany cheat Russia, though they built their economy with cheap gas of Russia. Yeah, that's true. the German chancellor, former chancellor, her name is, of course, Angela Merkel, just recently said that, oh yeah, we never intended to implement Minsk agreement. It was just to buy Ukraine time. While Germany built its industry on really cheap Russian energy, cheap Russian gas. Yep. So what do we have? Elena, I think USA prepare Poland to fight Germany. Well, Poland recently announced that it wants reparations from Germany. I think it was 1 trillion or something. I don't know, guys. These numbers don't mean anything anymore. They just keep growing every day. But all of a sudden, Poland did make some demands to Germany as far as paying reparations. Yep, that's what they are going to battle it out now. And of course, United States, it's pretty scary, guys. If we listen to General Petraeus, if you remember him from the time of Afghan war here in the United States, he was one of the lead commanders during Afghanistan war, I believe. He, maybe even in Iraq war, guys, it's been so many wars. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he recently came out and he said, well, we may not, get the NATO countries to agree to go into Ukraine to fight Russia, but we may create what he called the coalition of the willing. In other words, if anybody volunteers, and of course we know Poland is always trying to volunteer themselves to basically intervene. They have, other than straight out came out and said it, but in many ways, when about a month ago, remember when those rockets fell on Poland and poor 2 civilians, I believe, died in Poland? And Zelensky quickly said, oh, this was a Russian rocket. We need to attack Russia now. And NATO and Poland and the Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania all jumped on the bandwagon and said, oh, we need to call for Article 5. This is Russian aggression against NATO country. Well, finds out there was not a Russian rocket, but they were willing to go and start and involve themselves with war in nuclear power, Russia, on the false premise of the rocket that Zelensky blamed Russia for that rocket, which wasn't even Russian. Do you realize how quickly things can turn from crazy to insane and the world can end? We're on the brink of basically disaster. If this keeps going, if this war is unchecked, I see, let me actually share my screen with you. This is something concerning that I also saw. Let me see if I can share my screen, the Chrome tab. I think it's a Chrome tab here. Here is one concerning article that I read the other day. If you guys can see it, Britain and Japan to sign defense pact. They already signed it. And it would basically says that Japan is sort of stepping away from its years-long commitment after World War II to be a pacifistic country. So now Japan signed the agreement already that British troops will be allowed to enter Japan. And of course, they cited the threat from China. And Japan also had some other agreements signed between them and Australia. But I think Australia, when it came up for renewal, I think in 2007, it became non-binding or something along these lines. But Britain now is the Great Britain would be the first European country that has signed this pact with Japan, allowing their mutual troops enter each other's territory. Something is in the works, guys. If this war does not end soon, which it looks like it will not, I see how the chess pieces on the board are getting placed and how the countries and alliances are being formed. And the fact that Japan, from its commitment to being a pacifistic country and basically renouncing what took place during World War II and how Japan was involved, Japan is coming back on the map of military action. That's pretty concerning, guys. You could see this article. We have, why is Poland? Why is Poland so aggressive to Russia? Good question. You know what's interesting? Poland, historically, of course, being not too far from Russia, has been involved in a lot of different land divisions. And the territory of Western Ukraine changed hands. They had many different wars. And at some point, even Russian Tsar controlled Poland as a form of autonomous kingdom within Russian Empire. So there is a lot of things that happened between the two countries over the years. But if you really think about it, when Hitler and Stalin divided Poland, a lot of people feel like, that was not something that they would like to have seen done. And they felt like, well, Stalin sided with Hitler and, they divided Poland. From what I understand, that at the time, Stalin tried to sort of justify that by saying that he wanted to create a buffer between Hitler and the Soviet Union. And so that would be like a buffer zone. I mean, look what Turkey is doing in Syria. Russia started its military operation, and so did Turkey. Nobody hears about Turkey going into Syria and wanted to create a buffer zone. So looks like it's a long line of different grievances. But the problem of Poland, I think, is that it pretty much became a colony of the United States, and whatever Biden wants and whatever NATO wants, because obviously Poland gets a lot of money from United States and the NATO and all the support it needs. And Poland now wants to grow and become a biggest European army. I think they've increased it first from 250,000 now to 350,000. Now they want to have almost 500,000 troops. They want to become the biggest and most viable army in Europe. So Poland has a lot of big ambitions. And to some extent, you could see it's a competition with Russia. In fact, when the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline was blown up, at the same day, the new pipeline opened between Norway and Poland, gas pipeline. In other words, a Russian gas pipeline was blown up, and the same day, of course, by coincidence, a new gas line from Norway to Poland was opened. So a lot of competition. And of course, between Poland considers Russia, of course, a competitor in military sense, in geopolitical sense. There is some history involved. And of course, Poland is doing the United States bidding in Europe because it gets financed heavily by United States. So whatever Biden wants, Poland basically does, which is unfortunate that Poland sort of became just like Ukraine, not the country that is of its own. It's basically externally governed, just like Ukraine is. That's how I see it. You guys may have a different opinion. Here we have another comment. Poland wants to take Western Ukrainian territory. That's possible too. I've even seen some of the maps where Poland supposedly, and of course we don't know if those maps are true or not, but some people shared some photos that, of course, Poland wants to have more influence in Ukraine and Western Ukraine, which again, before World War II, part of it was under Poland and was part of Polish territory. So they lost that territory during World War II. And of course, they probably wouldn't mind to have it back. But of course, Zelensky signed a lot of agreements with Polish Duda. What is it? He's their president, Duda, Andrzej Duda, I believe. And you will not believe it, guys. Zelensky and Duda, of course, they were hugging there on the stage, like I want to say not PG-13 hugging. And then they've created a bunch of laws where Polish citizens will now have privileged status in Ukraine. Believe that. So there were conversations that they may even be elected to elected offices or something along those lines. So Poland now is basically very closely integrated into Ukraine, even in the form of new laws which grant Polish citizens special status on the territory of Ukraine. So Poland, through non-military means, already in some ways are being integrating Ukraine into Ukraine and Ukraine into on itself. So, yeah, there is a good comment. Yeah, Jerry Green, a lot of puppet regimes. Yes, pretty much. If you think about what is going on and how all the European regimes voluntarily impose sanctions on Russia, and those sanctions hurt not Russia, but their own citizens, because now their own citizens cannot afford energy prices, they cannot afford food, they cannot afford basics. But those puppet regime leaders voluntarily imposed sanctions on Russia, which didn't hurt Russia a bit, only hurt their own countries and their own citizens. That's the definition of the puppet regime in my book. Okay, who do we have? We have Jerry again. Lots of movement and maneuvering going on. Wow. Yes. What do you guys think? I have actually wanted to mention this interview I did today, which I'm going to post later. And the interview I've done, we actually discussed that maneuvering and whether anybody believes that we will be into nuclear war or nuclear exchange. We have Richard Krevis. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Richard. I don't know. What do you guys think? Write some comments. Do you think there will be a nuclear exchange in the end of it? Because it does not look like either Biden administration or world leaders want to have any peace. And it sounds like if this keeps going, at some point, there could be a mistake. There could be like one of those rockets that Zelensky screamed was Russian, which it wasn't, and trying to call for actions. And Zelensky already called for NATO to do preventative strike at Russia. What do you guys think? Are we going to see a nuclear exchange? The interview I made today, we're discussing that with the legendary man from Donbass area. His name is Russell Texas Bentley. I am working on that video. Hopefully I'll post it sooner, either this night or tomorrow morning. It's a long interview. And I've asked him, I said, what do you think? Is it going to be a nuclear exchange? He actually thinks that it's likely there will be, because he thinks that this war, the way it's going, the West does not want to negotiate. The West just wants to bleed Russia. The West just wants to have Russia have a regime change, because that's what their goal for this war. Ukraine is not the main goal. The Ukraine is just the means. The goal is Russia, regime change in Russia. Like Biden said in May of this 2022, Biden said, remember in Poland, in his speech, famous speech, this man cannot remain in power, said Biden, of course, meaning Mr. Putin, Russian president. And of course, his White House secretary, spokesperson tried to walk it back, whatnot, but we know, because when President Obama said this, Gaddafi must go, we know what happened to Gaddafi, Muammar Gaddafi, Libya's leader. So yeah, and we pretty much have the same people in charge of United States that just like to run around and change regimes. Look at Victoria Nuland. He was caught in a phone conversation in 2014, handpicking Ukrainian government after they removed the legally elected president of Ukraine back then in 2014. So it's insane. But the interview that I was taping was with this guy.
Years that we've never met in person.
You've never met Russell?
You see the guy on the right is Russell. Russell is American who in 2014, when he realized that Ukraine started bombing its own people in eastern Ukraine, went down there And he was basically trying to help those people in eastern Ukraine. And he lives there to this day under Ukrainian shelling for the last 9 years and counting. That's who I interviewed today. And I'm going to post that video, but just so you know, when I post the video, you know who you will be looking to. Let's listen for a little quick tiny moment. That's his interview with some other guys, with John Mark Dugan as American in the Middle, and another gentleman. I'm not sure who he is, probably also American. But Russell Texas Bentley is like legendary. Redacted, the show that we know on YouTube, has mentioned him. Just about every major outlet interviewed him over the years. Only, of course, they never mentioned that it's Ukraine that's shelling its own people. But Russell knows the truth. He lives there. He lived there for years. Let's listen for a second.
That probably most people would want to ask you is, how have things changed in the Donbass, since the actual special military operation started? Because you're the person who's been there all these years through all of this from the very beginning, who put their life on the line, especially at the beginning, to make sure that the Donbass got to come home. And now the Donbass is home, at least according to TV screens in Moscow. So, how have things changed, man?
Well, the first thing that everybody needs to always remember is this war didn't start in February of 2022. It started in early 2014. Mm-hmm. I came to Donetsk in December of 2014 to join the army and to defend the people of Donbass and to, as I said back then, punish the punishers. Mm-hmm. And I did that. I served a year in the DPR army. As a member of Vostok, as a member of Han Spetsnaz Battalion, and also as the MVD VV, which is like the military police. Avdiivka, Donbass front, Donetsk Airport, Spartak, Iznovata, and it's been a real war this whole time. I mean, a real war in the sense of we've been fighting against tanks, heavy artillery, even airstrikes, and so it's been a real war for 8 years, not just since the beginning of this year. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of the year, and people need to understand too that the reason that the Russians came in is because the Ukrainian army had amassed 120,000 troops along the Donbass front, which was about 200 miles. So 120,000 soldiers, artillery, tanks, everything, against the people's militia, DPR defenders, and we were way outnumbered. They were getting ready to come in. They were going to make a major assault. The Donbass front is literally on the city limits of the main cities of Donbass, which is Lugansk, Donetsk, Gorlovka, Makiivka, and so from the center of Donetsk, it's like 10 miles to the front line, less. And so they were getting ready. They had prepared. They had the intentions. They had the plans. And Russia knew about it. So they knew that if the Ukrainian army was able to make it halfway into the city, and Donetsk is a city of 1 million people, then that would have negated, it would have been urban warfare, and it would have negated the main military advantages that Russia has, which is its air power, its missile power, and its artillery. Because when you're surrounded by civilians, you can't use those weapons. And just as the Ukrainian Azov Nazis did in Mariupol, they had as a strategic tactic, they were going to use human shields. So Russia made the right move. They had no other choice but to come in at the beginning of or the end of February. They did. They saved tens of thousands, at least, of civilian lives by doing so. And it upped the war. The war is harder for everybody now, but it was inevitable. It was inescapable. And we thank Russia for what they did.
Well, one thing, why did it take them so long? Because if it took them sort of 8 years to prepare, and even then, Russia struck first, why did it take so long? They amassed 120,000 guys, and what? They sort of were waiting for a particular time
or
an opportunity?
The Ukrainians had a specific attack plan, and they were coming in, and, it was the first week of March was the planned start date for this offensive. You know, it's the weather's changing. It's like, I mean, and really the weather wouldn't have been that much of a consideration because, you know, it's not like they have to go through the mud in the fields because they're coming straight in on the main roads, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Russia for 8 years tried to make a diplomatic solution, tried to make the peaceful, least destructive solution. And when they understood that that was absolutely impossible, they did what they had to do. And I mean, you know, they hadn't planned on doing it that way, but they had to. And so, I mean, and mistakes were made. You know, they bit off more than they could chew in the beginning. They were trying to make an assault force with less than 1-to-1 when military principles say that you need, you know, 3 to 5 to 1 in order to attack a defending force. And I mean, they did well. They made some mistakes, but now the new general Surovikin. He's my kind of guy, you know. Anybody that Alexander Sladkov likes, Alexander Khodorkovsky likes, and Kadyrov likes, Ramzan Kadyrov likes.
Yeah.
I like them too.
Oh.
So it's a little preview, guys, of the legend of Donbass, Russell Texas Bentley. I have, again, had the privilege to interview him personally today. And I'm hoping that I can work on that video and post it for you as soon as it's done uploading. We had a little hard time trying to connect because there isn't much connection down there in Donbass region, you know, the infrastructure, and they have difficulty with water and internet connections. So Russell could only do Skype. It may be just, you know, a little bit... taking a little bit more time because we said like 2 hours talking and discussing different things, but I'm excited to have this interview, and soon I'll be uploading it to both of my YouTube channel. So make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You see this a little what is it called, QR code on my screen. If you point your phone to this QR code, it will take you directly to the YouTube channel, and I'm going to be uploading that interview with Russell to the Elena USA Live. Again, QR code, scan it with your camera and click on it. It will take you right down there. We have another interesting comment here. Why did Putin wait until February 2022 from 2014? Was he too busy with Sputnik experimental jabs? Also, Vladimir, I didn't catch that. Putin never helped his Serbian brothers in 1999 NATO war Mangar. Sounds like there is a Putin fan here. I think it's a good question to ask. I know that recently some people came out and talked about situation between Serbia and Kosovo as NATO is trying to sort of agitate that area again. And Vučić, Serbian president, pretty much is saying we want to have peace. We want to avoid any fighting at all costs. And so the notion was that if they will stir things up in Serbia and Kosovo again, then maybe Russia then will have to open a second front and help Serbia. And so while all of this was going on for a few months, and it still goes on, people were asking Serbs and said, well, so what about Russia? Aren't they helping you? Aren't they going to help you? Well, Serbs leaders said at this time, this year, that they did not ask Russia for help. And then top diplomat Lavrov came out and said that nobody has requested any help from us. And that's, again, 2022. So, yeah, you have to remember, I think Putin became president in the year 2000 some. I'd have to double check. But definitely, there are many questions about the Serbia situation when Clinton ordered that country bombed. And Vučić, Serbian president, spoke in UN and he said, everybody cares about Ukraine. Everybody says, what about Ukraine? You know, all this aggression against Ukraine. And Vucic said, what about my country when the NATO countries bombed my country, Serbia, that was unprovoked? In his own words, that's how he views it. So there's definitely double standard when it comes to the West and NATO, which is unfortunate. But this is how those people are. And until they wake up one day and decide that they want world peace, we'll just keep having those poor people dying while we are told as American taxpayers that we are saving Ukraine, which nothing could be further from the truth. They're basically trying to destroy Ukraine. That's all it is. I have another comment. Thanks in advance, Elena, for such valuable information. Absolutely, guys. Absolutely. Let me see. Fascinating. We have Jerry Green. We have another comment. Jose, thank you for speaking this out, Elena. Absolutely, guys. I always say we don't lack people in America. We have lots of people. What we lack is we need more people with courage. I know nobody wants to hear the truth, but until you learn the truth about what's happening in Ukraine, you will not understand what's happening in the United States. Because the same people who brought Ukraine to its destruction, they are in charge of America. Look at Biden, look at Pelosi. The same people were involved when Ukraine legally elected president was removed in 2014. And think about Donald Trump, the president of the United States, impeachment, number one. They immediately put an inquiry to impeach our own president of the United States, Donald Trump, because he asked the question about Ukraine. Like, where's the money going on? It's like, what are we doing in Ukraine? Like, can we find out where our taxpayer money is going? Immediately, the Pelosi and everybody else started to gain up on him and say, impeach Trump. So we almost lost our American president over Ukraine, because the same people who removed the president of Ukraine are in charge of United States. And the same people who were harassing President Trump and sending his questions about Ukraine immediately as an inquiry to impeach him and remove him. Do you guys understand? So, in fact, in an interview with Russell that I'm going to upload, again, to my YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe to that Elena USA Live at the YouTube channel. Just Google it up and you'll be right there. Russell actually did say, as somebody who lived in Texas and now lives in what we call Donbass area, formerly Eastern Ukraine, according to the people who live there, because now after a referendum, the Donbass region voted to join Russian Federation as the subject, as like the republic, post two republics of the region of Donbass. Of course, Ukraine doesn't recognize the referendum, and no does United States. But he said, if Americans don't understand what's happening in America, all they have to do is look at Ukraine and what's happening there, and they will get the feel for what's going on. I have to agree, because as somebody who knows what's happening in Ukraine, I can see very grand parallels in what's happening in America. We don't have free speech anymore. Well, Ukraine doesn't have free speech either. People get banned. Zelensky banned all the opposition channels. The Ukrainian volunteers are complaining that they get banned for criticizing Zelensky. It's unbelievable. If Ukrainian volunteer speaks about humanitarian aid theft by train loads in Ukraine, he gets arrested. You can't criticize Zelensky. There is no freedom of speech. They have martial law. Well, look at what's happened in America. People get banned on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube constantly for posting something that main narrative does not like. And now we know Elon Musk revealed a little bit of that, what they do on the orders of FBI. What kind of freedom of speech we have in America? We have none. So, and if you look at Ukraine, how Ukraine now is waging the war in church. Yeah, just guys, if you want to know what's happening in the United States, look at Ukraine, because the same people are in charge, basically. Look at Biden. He was in charge, quote unquote, of Ukraine. When he was vice president, he was there every week. And when the coup of 2014 took down legally elected president of Ukraine, Biden's son, Hunter Biden, got a job at Ukrainian oil and gas company Burisma Oil quickly right after the coup. What? Yeah. And of course, you could not learn about this story because that story was suppressed on Twitter. Now we know Elon Musk confirmed that. And many other stories about Hunter Biden and his and Biden's dealings in foreign countries were suppressed. And the truth just in Ukraine as forbidden as the truth in the United States. So if you don't understand what's happening in America, just look what's happening in Ukraine. Again, that's a good tip to follow. So we have Hunter Biden is on the payroll of Burisma. I don't know if he resigned since then or not, but I'm sure they have a lot of what we call diaper companies. If you remember, if you scroll my page down, I actually have several videos with, I believe it's Tony Babulinski. He used to be an associate of Hunter Biden. He gave several interviews and he provided the information about Hunter Biden dealings in foreign countries. So you could check Tony Babulinski's interview. I think he gave one to Tucker Carlson, and recently he gave a couple of interviews. I have them on my page, the long interviews, but there are some insights on Hunter Biden dealings in foreign countries and how he, Tony Babulinski, basically testifies as to connection between the Biden family. There is Joe Biden's uncle that is also one of the associates of their business dealings. Yeah, it's a very nice family operation there, quote unquote nice, right? So we have another comment here. Zelensky is the enemy of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Well, he's pretty much positioned himself as the foreign government puppet. So he's fighting his own people. He, like I said, banned all opposition leaders' parties. He banned all the independent media. Now he's banning the church and the religious expression. And when he comes to America to get another check for a few $100 billion, we're just going to sing praise to him. And Pelosi is going to run up and say, oh, this is the democratic leader of the free world, the democracy in Ukraine. That's what we're supporting. What democracy, Nancy? Have you guys seen how they tie people to the lamppost, take their underwear down and beat, and the strangers make TikTok videos to humiliate and embarrass people? Yeah, no due process. If somebody just says, oh, this person is bad or this person did something, they tie them to the pole, and Ukrainian armed forces do that as well. Stick something in their mouth, humiliate them publicly, take their underwear down, and people are publicly taking videos of that. That's a democracy that we, with our taxpayers' dollars, and Pelosi supposedly supporting in Ukraine, quote unquote democracy, right? Because that's totally insane. We have Ida. Thank you so much for all this interesting information. Thank you, Ida. Yeah, I see the Nelson says Yanukovych. Yes, the president who was removed in 2014 by EU and US sponsored coup is Viktor Yanukovych. You guys can watch the video. Probably Rumble still has it. I have it on my page. It's called Ukraine on Fire. Oliver Stone, Academy Award winning filmmaker, made that movie, Ukraine on Fire. I think YouTube tried to take it off, and so people wouldn't see it, but I think it's still available on Rumble, and if you scroll my page, you'll find it. It deals with the events of 2014. It shows you the famous conversation of Victoria Nuland when she handpicked Ukrainian government, and it actually interviews Yanukovych, Viktor Yanukovych, rather, the former president of Ukraine. You see, when he was removed, he fled to Russia because they threatened his life. And the Nazi regime that came to power, the neo-Nazi type regiments who stormed the Ukrainian parliament, and it was insanity. That movie, Ukraine on Fire, shows you all the documentary about that. What happened, how it happened. You will get a really good perspective. But the difference between Yanukovych and President Trump, because the same people who were in charge, quote unquote, of bringing down the government of Ukraine were the ones who tried to impeach President Trump here at home in the United States. The only difference is President Trump did not run away. He stood and fought. And we know what happened. But President Yanukovych, his life was threatened in Ukraine, and he and his family, he ran to Russia to hide from the new neo-Nazi coup regiments that were basically threatening him and his family. Yep, let me see. Democracy Nazi style. Yeah, pretty much. Because we in America cannot fathom how would this be possible that one ethnic group would consider themselves superior to another ethnic group and all of a sudden started to make laws to ban the language of another ethnic group, to deprive them of their rights, of their culture, of their religion, of their church. But Ukraine is doing all of it. To Russian-speaking population, to ethnic Russian population, Ukraine is doing all of it to other minority group. Just look what Ukrainian neo-Nazi type of regiments were doing in the Western Ukraine, where there is a faction of Hungarian population that lives on the territory of Ukraine. Just recently, the Ukrainian quote-unquote government took down their special bird. I think the bird was called Turul. It's like this mystical bird that Hungarian people hold very high regard, and they had a monument to this mystical bird in the area of Western Ukraine where Hungarian population, historically Hungarian population, lives in Ukraine. Well, they took the bird out. They took it off the monument, destroyed basically the culture, a symbol of Hungarian ethnic minority of Ukraine. I mean, really, this is democracy. This is what all the billions to Ukraine are all about. So Zelensky and the Nazi regime that he's supporting could harass minorities, destroy their culture, destroy their religion, destroy their belief system, forbid them to speak their own language that they used to speak for generations. What? So if you guys didn't wake up yet, wake up, because unless you wake up, that's basically nothing that is going to change that. Yeah, I have this comment here from Jerry, culture cleansing. Exactly. You know what? They actually have a new term to this. Of course, we keep inventing new terms, the more atrocities surface, right? You have to start inventing new terms. I have seen the Russian parliament member actually called what Ukraine is doing, what Jerry rightly so said, culture cleansing. He called it ethnocide. So basically getting rid of ethnic groups by killing off their language, killing off their culture, forbid them using their monuments, their history, rewriting the history. That's what Ukraine does now. It rewrites history. The fact that the portions of the southern parts of Ukraine were founded by Russian Empress Catherine the Great during Russian Empire time, and the city of Odessa that she founded and some other cities nearby, while Ukraine now, I believe, dismantled the monument to her that was there for generations. Since like 19th century, there was a new memorial. So they cannot stand it now that there is a historical figure who founded the city is honored in the city in Ukraine. So the monument to the historical figure, the founder of the city, has to be removed. So the history has to be rewritten. That's insanity. Let me see. That was Hungary. It was Hungary till 1920s. Yeah, absolutely. That little area where Hungarian population resides. If you guys remember history, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Hungary was big in its sort of heyday. So it was a part of Austrian-Hungarian Empire. And of course, there is a First World War and there was a Second World War. Lots of those territories and borders changed. So a little bit of a Hungarian population got basically now trapped in the part of Western Ukraine. And I know Viktor Orban, Hungarian president, he said many times that he doesn't like it how the Ukrainian government handles the rights of Hungarian minorities in Ukraine. They're pretty much oppressing the Hungarian minority. So this has to stop. Yeah. Let me see. They've rewritten so much history as far as what they teach in our country too, unfortunately. That's very true. That's very true. They absolutely do this. I hope I got everybody's comment. We have Tom Casey, America Cancels History. That's very unfortunate. We have Carl, we love Viktor Orban. Yeah, Viktor Orban is the only one who did not submit to EU, basically demanding Hungary to sign up for this anti-Russia sanctions. And Viktor Orban was the only one who stood up, and he said that I will act in the best interest of my countrymen. And I do not believe that Hungary approving the sanctions and signing up as the rest of the EU for the sanctions would be in the best interest of my country. So at least I don't know if now in any way, shape or form, Hungary, because I know Hungary blocked some help to Ukraine a few times, or aid from Ukraine rather, from EU. But at some point, I think they did try to twist Hungary's arm, and maybe they did do it once. But for majority of the time, Viktor Orban took a very independent position and pretty much said that he will act in the best interest of their country. And I think there was some talks about Hungary maybe leaving the EU. I don't even know if that's still in the works. We have Jason. Thank you for speaking out this. Yeah. Let me see. Russia could win because we striking multiple times first and the USA cannot counter it. Well, this is something interesting, guys, to think about. A lot of people don't know that. And I always say Biden cannot wait to shake Putin's dead hand. Well, what do I mean by dead hand? Well, you have to know that. Biden has changed nuclear doctrine of United States, saying the United States can now do a preemptive strikes. I think it was in April 2022 when he did it, to reflect more of Obama policy or whatnot. And United States can now strike even if there was like a computer hacking attack. So in other words, it doesn't have to be a missile attack on United States soil. Even if it's, let's say, a computer hacking that is deemed the threat to national security, then United States can still do a preemptive or first nuclear strike, rather. So imagine if there was a computer hacking attack and God forbid, somebody would mistakenly attribute it to, let's say, Russia. And then America strikes Russia with the first nuclear strike, deeming that was enough of national security threat to do it. Well, it's all nice and well thinking, yeah, we strike Russia first. Russia has no time to respond. So we're all good sitting here pretty. Guess what? Russia has the Soviet era system called dead hand, meaning if United States or anybody else strikes Russia first in a nuclear strike, and even if entire Russian command will die from that strike, everybody's dead. No Russians to push the button in retaliation. The system called dead hand takes over, and automatically, all pre-programmed, the launch of the missiles from wherever they came from goes to all pre-coordinated targets from Russia, even if they're all dead in the commander-in-chief office or chain of command in Russia. So, yeah, and I think Russia said it many times that nuclear war should not be fought because it cannot be won. And so Americans who like to be cavalier and said, well, we can strike Russia, they will not be able to respond. They'll be all dead. Well, think again. Russia's dead hand. Think about that. So there is no win-win situation. We need peace talks. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like anybody wants to have peace talks with Russia. Russia has extended many times. Recently, Russian envoy to UN said that we're always open to negotiations, but it looks like the West really does not want, and the West just wants to see what happens on the battlefield. And the Russian envoy, I believe his name is Nebezhnya. I'm not sure if it's Viktor Nebezhnya, but his last name is Nebezhnya. He said that if the West does not offer us any means to come to the peaceful talks and peaceful negotiations, which we're always open to, that we will have to win by means in a military sense. In other words, they're open to peace talk, but the West just doesn't seem to want that. So I have Max. Max, I absolutely agree. I think, Max, you were talking about nuclear when I was talking about nuclear strikes, or maybe something else, but I'm glad you agree with me. I hope, yeah. And I'm catching up on some comments. Jerry says, yeah, FBI interviewed Tony Bobulinski, the guy who was Hunter Biden's associate, for 4 hours and said, we'll get back with you, and they never did. Yeah, Tony Bobulinski said all these years he was available, but nobody was interested in his testimony other than Tucker Carlson in like Fox News one time, and maybe some independent bloggers a couple of times too. I see refugees from Ukraine. I have here, Katie, refugees from Ukraine. Yeah, refugees from Ukraine. A lot of problems there. I think, is it Germany who recently came out, or was it? I know Poland's already said before that it's running out of funds, but I think Germany recently came out. Correct me, guys, if I'm wrong, but one of the European countries, I think it's Germany, said that they didn't account for as much money in the budget, and they actually now will ask refugees to pay their own rent. So I think Poland said it a long time ago that refugees will have to apply for work, and only women with children will continue to receive some type of a monthly fee, monthly aid in the form of monetary funds, but the rest have to pretty much go and find themselves a job. So it's not easy for the Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees. Let me see. Where are the democratic forces in Ukraine? Anti-Nazi, anyone? Well, here is a good question, Nelson. The problem is you cannot protest in Ukraine anymore. And you couldn't for years because they harass people, they arrest people. When the coup happened, a lot of people went into the streets and protested that coup, Western United States and EU-backed coup that removed that legally elected president of Ukraine in 2014. And our State Department undersecretary at the time, Eurasian Affairs, Victoria Nuland, in famously leaked conversation, BBC posted that leaked conversation. It's all over YouTube. You can find transcripts. She pretty much picked Ukrainian government. And lots of people, when they realized that their elected president was taken down, went in the streets and started protesting. But then the neo-Nazi ideology, regiments and thugs was sent by Ukrainian government to put them down. And they were tortured, beaten up, done really very bad atrocities to them. If you Google Tornado Battalion, Amnesty International wrote about this. Amnesty International wrote about Ukrainian IDAR battalion and the human rights violations and atrocities that those battalions did in Ukraine, trying to suppress the very people who would oppose to the Nazi ideology types that came basically to very official integration in Ukraine's official policy after the 2014 coup. There is a very good website, I think it's called Stalker Zone, and it has lots of information on the Tornado, IDAR. These are all the names of various Ukrainian Nazi battalions who were sent basically as punishers to those people who would protest Nazi ideology. And the ones that they couldn't kill, they put them in prison. It's insane. So it's not safe, and it's basically now completely impossible with the martial law to even gather to protest anything in Ukraine. Zelensky banned all of that. There is no free speech. There is no independent media. Any people who want to say something immediately get arrested, killed, tortured, or like in Odessa, the southern part of Ukraine, a city where people actually went and protested the coup. The neo-Nazi thugs rounded them up into the trade union building, and they burned those people alive. Those people were peaceful protesters, and they basically said that they didn't like this coup, and they didn't want to remain under the power of the coup government that immediately started to ban Russian language and sent them their own officials instead of the elected officials of the city. It was basically a coup d'etat, and the peaceful protesters were rounded up by Nazi neo-thugs into the building and set on fire. Over 50 people burnt alive, and they were not allowed to leave. They were jumping from the windows, and they were beaten and killed on the ground if they made on that ground alive. I have postings about it on my page, and Google Odessa, May 2nd, 2014, Odessa massacre. That's what happened. That's how impossible it is to speak out in Ukraine. Either burned alive, put in prison, beaten up by Nazi battalions, or official government will arrest. They now fine people. They fine officials now for speaking Russian. And they now send battalions and armed forces to raid churches in Ukraine. And they recently withheld the citizenship from, I believe, 13 priests of Ukrainian Orthodox Church for maybe finding a brochure or something, or deeming them to be pro-Russian in some way. So from priests to regular peaceful protesters, nobody is safe in Ukraine. Nobody is safe in Ukraine. You cannot speak up, and God forbid you spoke against Nazi ideology of Stepan Bandera. That's almost like a anti-government offense now, because Bandera is hailed as a hero in Ukraine. And they actually have torch-lit parades in his honor. There was a celebration of his birthday on January 1st, just this year. Every year they celebrate Stepan Bandera, Nazi collaborator with Hitler's birthday in Ukraine, with torch-lit march parades. So imagine coming out to that parade and protest. You'll be killed instantly. That's my thought. I mean, maybe somebody thinks it's pink and rosy, and no, it's not. If you, in a few years ago, I watched a video of World War II celebration when the basically United Allies troops, American, British, and Soviet Union at the time troops won the war against Hitler Germany, right? Lots of monuments have been installed in Ukraine and throughout the former Soviet Union to honor this victory against Hitler. And on the May 9th, every year, people gather in honor of those fallen, of those who fought against Hitler, and come to the monuments and lay down flowers. You can't do that in Ukraine anymore. Neo-Nazi thugs come and beat you up, and they harass the veterans. They rip off their orders of honor or valor. They rip it off, and they harass them. They beat them up. Imagine, that's Ukraine. Yep. And videos all over YouTube, and articles are all over. But if they find the remains of former Nazi collaborators of Stepan Bandera, they gave them state military honors funeral, and they wear Nazi uniforms to this funeral, and state officials attend those funerals. Yeah, there's videos all over the place. I've posted them too. Yeah, that's insane. Let me see. Was terrible. The demonstrators sprang from the building and burst into the ground. Then Russia, like a telephone call to Victoria Nuland from Changing Ukraine will push Ukraine and NATO and EU. Yeah, Ariana is writing about the coup, what happened during the coup. Yeah, the Victoria Nuland handpicked Ukrainian government. That's pretty much what she did. We know that. Federation of Russia is here to stay, says and Sue Singaray. Well, Russian Federation is a nuclear nation. If we think we're going to waltz into Russia and change regime of the nuclear nation, we have to remember that's not Iraq. Iraq did not have nuclear weapons. And we know that now because we have numerous articles, numerous experts, weapon inspectors, including Scott Ritter, who has become very popular with giving interviews about Ukraine-Russia war, saying that they did not find any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, but Iraq is gone. But Russia is not Iraq. Russia has nuclear weapons and has a bigger army in Ukraine. And for us to sit and dream how Ukraine's going to defeat Russia is nonsense. All it does, it kills more Ukrainian lives and kills Ukraine as a country. And if that's what our politicians want to do, to kill Ukrainians with our taxpayer dollars, while lying to us that we're giving the money to save Ukraine, you guys just have to wake up. We're not saving Ukraine. We just have to face the truth. So we will have another comment. We have, I will, if they put the bust on Zelensky and our US capital, I will riot. I will riot. If they put a bust of bust. You probably want to say bust of Zelensky in our state capital. Oh yeah, they want to put the bust of Zelensky now. Yeah, he's that important. Now they want to honor him. Wow. So Zelensky is kind of tyrant thug, and our government pretends like he's a good guy defending himself for Russia. Must be because our government wants to initiate conflict against Russia through Ukraine as a proxy. Yeah. In fact, if you watch the early interviews, there was this congressman, Adam Kinzinger, I think from Illinois. He's a Republican, but I think he always voted with Democrats, which I'm sure, you know what the proper terminology for that is, yes? But when he gave an interview to one of the news outlets, and that was when this war pretty much started, I was pretty shocked, but he basically said that, yeah, we are at war. We are sort of at war with Russia, kind of through the proxy, Ukraine. So he said it. They're not, they're not really hiding that. It's just they're American people who don't pay attention. They don't understand what's happening. And I'm wondering what Ukrainian soldiers feel like. They probably have no idea what they're dying for. They think they're dying for Ukrainian independence. Only Ukraine has lost its independence long time ago, even before 2014, but more so in 2014, when the foreign governments orchestrated the coup in Ukraine and took down democratically elected president in there. So Ukraine is not independent. That's a fantasy. And my heart goes out to Ukrainian soldiers who are dying for foreign government's control of Ukraine. That's pretty much what's happening, because Ukraine is not independent. If you guys look, maybe I'll do a next live about it. When Zelensky became a president, he signed a law to allow the sale of the land of Ukraine. And for years, Ukraine had moratorium on the land sales. And as you know, Ukrainian lands are priced like they have black dirt that's like the most productive in the world. Everybody just can't have enough of it. Yeah, I see Carl said rhino. Yeah, that term for the person who says he is Republican but votes with Democrats is Republican in name only. I guess short for abbreviation rhino. Yeah, let me see. Gary says Ukrainians are dying for nothing. Well, that's a shock of it. They think they're dying for their country, but basically they're dying to keep American Biden administration and all the corrupt politicians happy that they're actually trying to weaken Russia with their death. Because the goal is Russia. The goal was never Ukraine. Ukraine is just a means to get at Russia, to have regime change in Russia. And then, they've stated that, what is the guy's name? Tom Bolton, rather? I don't remember his first name. He was advisor during many administrations, the latest with Donald Trump, but obviously he was at odds with Donald Trump. He wrote an entire article saying, why Putin needs to go and there is time for regime change in Russia. He wrote that article to the news outlet called 1945. That's actually a news outlet name, 1945. Yeah, they're not hiding that the Ukrainian soldiers are basically dying so they could have the American corrupt politicians could accomplish their dream of changing regime in Russia, and they don't mind to put all of our lives in danger of nuclear exchange and nuclear war while they're at it. See, they don't have any empathy for Ukrainians dying, not for Americans dying either, because if you want to poke the bear who has nuclear weapons, we know how it will end. And of course, they could care less because they probably prepared their bunkers already. I don't know. But yes, guys, about the land in Ukraine, I should probably do another live about that. But the people think that Ukraine has all this great land and whatnot, but Zelensky signed a decree saying that the land now is available for sale. And of course, Ukrainian people protested and they did not want to have Ukrainian land to be sold to foreigners and foreign entities. Well, guess what? China now owns a big chunk of Ukrainian land. American corporations own now. But of course, some of them signed the 50-year leases or whatnot. Some signed it through the Ukrainian proxy companies. But one of the speeches that President of Russia, Putin, gave, I was sort of puzzled when he said, oh, everybody's talking about Ukrainian grain cannot be exported out of Ukraine. He says, it's not even Ukrainian grain anymore because it's owned by foreign Western corporations, including American corporations. So yeah, do some research on the land in Ukraine and who owns it. You will be surprised. While the Ukrainian soldiers are thinking that they're fighting for their land, the land of Ukraine, the land's been already sold for pretty much into foreigners' hands through diaper corporations, through different entities, through different substitute a la Ukrainian registered firms. Yeah. So it's one big disaster. My heart goes to the people of Ukraine because they have been dealt by their own corrupt politicians and the world corrupt politicians just a very deathly blow, and they're rendered powerless. They cannot do anything. So until the West decides to magically negotiate with Russia, Zelensky will keep pressing for this war to continue, and the West will do the same because they want to bleed Russia out. They want to weaken Russia. They want to make Russian people start becoming unhappy so they could topple down Putin. I mean, it's insanity, but that's what's on the way. And of course, in the meantime, the military contractors are making money like mad. So, nobody wants, why stop the good thing, quote unquote, good thing, right? While it keeps making money. So yeah, it's very tragic. It's tragic for Ukrainian nation. We have Katie said, yeah, money laundering. Exactly. You see, Kerry says, exactly, they aren't even a democracy, and Zelensky has been in bed with Biden since he was a VP, total corruption. Yeah. And nobody wants to investigate Biden. And of course, now Republicans are forming some type of a committee, and we'll see if anything will come to light. And thank you, Jerry. John Bolton, yes, the gentleman I mentioned who wrote the article that Putin needs to go and they need a regime change. John Bolton, thank you very much. There's so many of this guy's name. I see NATO cannon fodder. Yeah, it's unfortunate, Gary. They've been used as basically a battlefield cannon fodder. And I see lots of videos how many Ukrainian graves have been dug every day. There are thousands of fresh, they have a tractor and it just goes and digs the graves all day long. And the funerals are non-stopping, and the death is just basically the everyday Funeral is an everyday activity in Ukraine now. Somebody is dead. And until the West decides to have peace talks with Russia and figure this all out and establish a new security framework where they might want to consider Russia's interest, because that's what Russia has been asking for years. Russia's been saying, if you expand NATO to the east into Ukraine, that's a red line. And of course, NATO promised to, at that time, I think, who was at Gorbachev, when the Germany reunified, that NATO will not expand east, but of course it did expand east. So every promise that was made to quote unquote Russia about NATO non-proliferation, non-expansion has been broken. And the last straw was Ukraine. And of course, Russia kept warning and warning about this, and Ukraine kept pushing to get into NATO and get into NATO. And here we are. So everybody's got this situation into a one big mess, who kept pushing on the bear's buttons. And now bear said, this is enough. We'll see what bear does. We really don't know how far the West is willing to take it. I'm afraid that they are willing to take it all the way to nuclear exchange. And that's pretty much probably what it's going to be, unless we stop this somehow. Ukraine and USA and Britain have been raped by the globalists. Well, yeah, there's definitely now a lot of opportunities by John Kerry, if you remember. John Kerry, the American, I think he was former, I'm thinking, Secretary of State. Gosh, they had so many titles. Has been in politics forever. Keep changing, playing musical chairs. Well, John Kerry recently gave an interview, and he said that the demise of Europe and the Nord Stream 2 explosions are basically great opportunity to make Europe all green infrastructure. And then they have investors lined up to move into Europe and make sure that they take over Europe and turn it into green energy. And so Zelensky, at that Davos meeting with the globalists and all the WEF, World Economic Forum people, he said pretty much the same. He said, yeah, just give us the money and we'll turn Ukraine into this Green Deal haven on earth. So yeah, they have big plans for Ukraine. Okay, guys, I love you all. Have you big hugs. I probably talked too long already, but you know how much I love you all. So thank you for being here. Keep looking for my interview with Russell, and you guys will probably enjoy it. This is our first interview. I hope to do more with Russell. I'm going to check on video and see how it's uploading. Russell Bentley, with his nickname, Russell Texas Bentley, who lives in Donbass area, basically right on the front line there between Ukraine and the Donbass region. So it will be interesting interview. I'm sure we'll do more. We'll just have a first one, just kind of get a feel for what everybody's thoughts are. And I hope you enjoy it. I'll post it later. Check it out on my YouTube channel, Elena USA Live, and check this little QR code that is on the screen. Point your camera to it, and it will come up as a little border saying YouTube. Click on it and you could subscribe to my channel that way. I will make sure you'll find that video, guys, because I'm looking forward to see it myself. I haven't seen it yet. I just taped it a few hours back. So have a great night, everybody. We'll keep praying for peace in Ukraine and keep praying for peace between Russia and Ukraine. And that's all we can do right now. Give you big hugs. Have a good night, guys.